Imagine the scene that every parent dreads. You're in the middle of a crowded supermarket. The fluorescent lights are humming, and your child is on the floor, back arched, screaming at a volume that seems to shake the cereal boxes on the shelf. You feel the eyes of strangers burning into your back, judging you, whispering about control and discipline. In that heat of the moment, your blood boils, and the narrative in your head is almost instantaneous and aggressive. My child is being difficult. My child is being manipulative. My child is choosing to embarrass me. But what if everything you think you know about that moment is fundamentally wrong? What if I told you that the behavior you are witnessing is not a sign of disrespect, but a symptom of a biological system crashing? This is the most critical shift you will ever make as a parent, the radical shift from seeing a bad kid to seeing a struggling brain. We are culturally conditioned to view behavior as a binary choice, assuming that when a 4-year-old throws a toy or refuses to put on their shoes, they are making a calculated, logical decision to ruin our morning. But neuroscience demands that we strip away that assumption and look at the architecture beneath the surface. When a child flips their lid, they are not acting out of malice. They are acting out of raw instinct. Their downstairs brain, the ancient primitive part responsible for survival and instinct, has hijacked the entire system. It has detected a threat, and to a developing brain, that threat could be a scary dog, or it could simply be the overwhelming frustration of a banana peeling the wrong way. The brain pulls the fire alarm, flooding the body with cortisol and adrenaline. Think about the last time you were truly, deeply exhausted or pushed to your absolute limit. Maybe you snapped at your partner or cried over spilled coffee. Did you wake up that morning planning to be irrational? No, your biological capacity to regulate was depleted. Now imagine having a brain that is literally under construction. A brain where the wiring for self-control, logic, and emotional regulation is barely laid down, let alone fully connected. When we look at a melting down child and see bad behavior, we respond with judgment, punishment, and anger, which only adds fuel to the fire because we are threatening a brain that already feels unsafe. But when we shift our vision to see struggling biology, our entire physiology changes. Instead of an enemy to be defeated, we see a person in distress who needs a lifeline. Consider a swimmer flailing wildly in the deep end of a pool. If you believe they are splashing you on purpose just to be annoying, you might stand on the edge and yell at them to stop. But the moment you realize they are drowning, your reaction changes instantly. You don't yell, you jump in to save them. A tantrum is an emotional drowning. The upstairs brain, the part that thinks, reasons, and listens, is submerged under a wave of chemical emotion. When you adopt this mindset, you stop taking the chaos personally. You realize that the disrespect isn't about you. It's about a nervous system that has lost its equilibrium. This isn't about letting them off the hook or being permissive. It's about accurate diagnosis. You cannot fix a hardware problem with a software solution, and you cannot teach a lesson to a brain that is currently offline. This shift in perspective is the foundation of all connection, because it allows you to move from the role of a warden to the role of a mentor. Realizing that the storm in front of you is not an attack on your authority, but a cry for help from a mind that is momentarily lost in the dark. You have to understand that inside your child's head, there is a watchdog that never sleeps. A tiny almond-shaped structure called the amygdala that isn't interested in whether you are late for school or if the blue cup is in the dishwasher. Because its only job, its singular evolutionary purpose, is to ask one question 4 times every second. Am I safe? When the answer is no, even if that no is triggered by something as trivial as a sock, feeling too tight, or a sibling looking at them the wrong way, the downstairs brain slams its hand on the panic button with the force of a sledgehammer. This isn't a glitch in their personality. It is a perfectly functioning survival mechanism, designed by millions of years of evolution to keep them alive in a world full of predators. And unfortunately, it cannot tell the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a disappointment over screen time. We tend to dismiss these reactions as drama or overreacting, but you must realize that to the downstairs brain, there is no such thing as an overreaction. There is only reaction. It is a binary system where you are either safe or you are in danger, and when that alarm rings, it hijacks the entire body, flooding their little veins with cortisol and adrenaline, tensing their muscles for a fight, or freezing their limbs in fear. When you stand over a screaming child and shout, "Stop crying," it's not a big deal. you are fundamentally missing the biological reality of the moment, because to their internal alarm system, it is the biggest deal in the world. You are trying to negotiate with a fire alarm. If your smoke detector went off at 2 a.m., piercing the silence with that ear-splitting shriek, you wouldn't stand underneath it and lecture it about being too loud or unreasonable. You would respect the signal and look for the fire. Respecting the alarm does not mean you let the house burn down. Nor does it mean you let the child hit you or break things. There is a massive distinction between the feeling and the behavior. You can stop the behavior, you can catch the hitting hand while still. Honoring the validity of the impulse that drove it. When you mock their fear or minimize their anger, you are telling their survival brain that its radar is broken, which creates a terrifying dissonance in their mind where they no longer trust their own instincts. Instead of calming down, the alarm gets louder because now there is a second threat. The parent, the source of safety, has become the source of judgment. The goal is not to silence the alarm through intimidation, but to signal safety so the watchdog can stand down on its own. You have to acknowledge the intensity of the signal, looking them in the eye and validating the sheer magnitude of their experience, proving that you are not afraid of their big feelings. Because if you can't handle the alarm, how can you expect them to handle the fire? There is a dangerous optical illusion that happens in parenting, where we look at our children who can speak in full paragraphs, navigate complex iPad menus, and negotiate for a later bedtime with the rhetorical skill of a seasoned lawyer, and we assume that because they are verbally sophisticated, they must be emotionally sophisticated. You see a miniature adult standing in front of you, so you naturally expect adult-level consistency, adult-level logic, and adult-level impulse control. But this expectation is a trap that leads directly to parental burnout. You have to realize that the upstairs brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for every behavior you desperately want to see sound decision-making. Empathy, morality, and the ability to pause before acting is not just small, it is fundamentally unfinished. If you were to walk into the construction site of the upstairs brain, you wouldn't find a fully furnished office. You would find exposed wiring, holes in the floorboards, plastic tarps flapping in the wind, and a crew that is on a 25-year lunch break. We often forget that the human brain does not finish developing until a person is in their mid-20s. Meaning that when you are arguing with a 6-year-old or even a 16-year-old, you are engaging with a biological system that is literally under construction. This explains the maddening inconsistency that drives parents up the wall. The fact that your child can be an angel on Tuesdays, sharing their toys, using their words, regulating their body, and then a complete chaos agent on Wednesday. This isn't because they are manipulating you. It is because the wiring in the upstairs brain is loose. It's just like a light bulb in a renovation zone that flickers on and off depending on how the wind blows. Their capacity for regulation is intermittent, fragile, and easily overwhelmed by fatigue, hunger, or stress. When we treat them as if they are fully formed adults who are simply choosing to be difficult, we are holding them to a standard that their hardware cannot support. You are essentially asking for a quarterly performance report from a CEO who hasn't even been hired yet. When you ask a child, "What were you thinking?" after they paint the cat blue or jump off the couch, you are appealing to a part of the brain that wasn't online during the event. They weren't thinking in the way you understand it because the upstairs brain wasn't running the show. The primitive downstairs brain was. This construction project is massive and takes decades because the brain is prioritizing experience over efficiency in the early years. It is building billions of connections, pruning away the ones it doesn't need, and slowly insulating the staircase that connects impulse to logic. Expecting a child to have a consistently functioning upstairs brain is like expecting a house with no roof to keep you dry during a storm. It is not a failure of the child's character, it is a reality of their architecture. There is a profound absurdity in the way we handle a child's meltdown. It's a moment of almost comedic futility where we stand over a human being who is currently writhing on the floorboards, completely possessed by an ancient biological rage, and we attempt to conduct a performance review regarding their behavior. You watch their face turn red, their limbs flail, and their eyes glaze over with a look that is totally vacant of reason, and yet instinctually you begin to lecture. You say things like, "We do not hit our sister because it hurts her feelings," or "If you don't put your shoes on right now, we are going to be late for the dentist," as if the small feral creature in front of you is currently taking notes. But you are shouting at the dark. You are trying to illuminate a room where the electricity has been severed at the main breaker. When a child flips their lid, it is not a figure of speech. It's a neurological event where the vertical integration of the brain, the connection between the lower, emotional brain, and the upper, logical brains, physically blocked. Think of the downstairs brain as the router, and the upstairs brain as the computer that downloads the data. When the lid flips, the amygdala has essentially walked over and unplugged the router from the wall. You can type as furiously as you want. You can click refresh 1,000 times. And you can scream at the screen, but you cannot download a file when there is no Wi-Fi. In this state, the staircase we talked about is not just cluttered. It is barricaded by a security gate that is locked from the inside. The physiological reality is that during a state of high arousal, when cortisol is coursing through the system, the auditory processing centers of the brain actually change function. They stop listening for the syntax, logic, and meaning of your words. They start listening only for tone, volume, and threat. This means that when you raise your voice to make a logical point, saying, "I told you to stop throwing the blocks," the only data the child's brain receives is loud noise, which the amygdala interprets as danger, causing it to pour even more fuel on the fire to protect itself. You are trying to teach a lesson to a brain that has entered a temporary state of insanity. It is akin to seeing a pilot struggling to control a plane in a nosedive and radioing them to discuss the in-flight meal options. Not only is the timing wrong, but the distraction is actively making the crash more likely. When you lecture a child who is dysregulated, you are not teaching them, you are overstimulating them. You become part of the chaos they are trying to survive. The logic center, the moral center, the part of them that loves you and wants to be good, is currently sitting in the dark upstairs, waiting for the power to come back on, and no amount of shouting from the basement is going to flip that switch. You have to accept the terrifying realization that in the heat of the moment, your child is physically incapable of reaching the second floor of their own mind without assistance, because the staircase has crumbled and they are trapped in the basement of their own biology. This is where your role shifts from being a warden who punishes the prisoner to being the architect who rebuilds the facility. When we say be the staircase, we are not using a poetic metaphor for being nice. We are describing a neurological function where you lend your fully developed, regulated adult brain to a child whose system has gone offline. You become the external prefrontal cortex, or the bridge. When you choose to connect to redirect, dropping down to their eye level, softening your voice and offering a hug even when they are screaming, "I hate you," you are not rewarding bad behavior, nor are you being a permissive doormat. You are performing a precise surgical intervention on their nervous system. By injecting safety into a moment of threat, you are manually soothing the amygdala, convincing the watchdog to stop barking, so that the gate to the stairs can swing open again. This is the only way to get them out of the basement. If you stay upstairs and yell down at them, the distance remains. But when you go down and walk them up by hand, you are doing something far more permanent than simply stopping a tantrum. Every single time you do this, every time you choose to connect before you correct, every time you validate the emotion before you address the behavior, you are physically altering the structure of their brain through the miracle of neuroplasticity. Think of the connection between their impulse and their logic like a path through a dense forest. The first time they try to walk from angry to calm, the path is overgrown, full of thorns and nearly impossible to navigate alone. But every time you walk that path with them, holding their hand, guiding them from the chaos of the downstairs to the logic of the upstairs, you are trampling down the grass, you are clearing the debris. In neuroscience terms, you are stimulating the firing of neurons along that specific pathway. And because neurons that fire together wire together, you are wrapping that staircase in myelin, the fatty insulation that turns a slow dirt path into a high-speed fiber optic cable. You are not just managing a difficult Tuesday afternoon, you're constructing the superhighway of resilience that they will use when they are 30 years old and their boss yells at them or their heart gets broken. The discipline isn't in the punishment. The discipline is in the repetition of the connection, the grueling, repetitive work of laying one brick after another on a staircase that they will eventually learn to climb on their own. But until that structure is solid, until that highway is paved, you cannot expect them to make the journey without a guide. Which means that in the midst of the fire, you must be the one who refuses to burn, standing firm as the sturdy, unshakable architecture that allows them to rise above their basest instincts.